Hello, pattern readers, and welcome to part 5 of the Great Hunt reread. Make sure you're caught up on the previous parts, which covered the prologue through chapter 11. I wanted to let you know about an idea I'm working on. It's just a potential at this point, but I would like to try and explore options for increasing engagement with these reread videos. So right now, I would be potentially working with Dragon Mount and trying to boost engagement with these on Twitter. All the details to be worked out, and I will share that with you in the near future. But I did want to mention it in case you're not already on Twitter and following Twitter of Time. I highly recommend that you do because it's a great way to stay engaged with the fandom, and I hope we can bring this reread into it a little bit more. So stay tuned. And now let's get to the chapters. Chapter 12, Woven in the Pattern. Back in the courtyard of Faldara, Egwene pushes through the crowd, trying to figure out what the commotion is about, and hears that there was an attempt on the Amyrlin Seat's life. As she nears Swan's palanquin, she sees that Agomar is trying to convince Swan to stay long enough to catch the bowman, but Swan cuts him off and turns her eyes to Egwene and Nynaeve. Egwene nervously curtsies and feels like Swan is looking at her as a tool during her brief acknowledgement. Swan then orders an immediate departure, and Egwene scrambles to get on Bella. They travel as far as they can each day and sleep in tents, or on the ground, if you're a man, each night. Once, Lan comes to talk to Nynaeve, but that ends in anger and tears on Nynaeve's part. Moiraine pays them no attention, but other Aes Sedai do come to see Egwene and Nynaeve in their tent. The first night, it is Verin who comes to give Egwene a lesson in the power. She explains why Egwene must have lessons immediately, because she has already begun channeling, but is not yet past the risk of using saidar unsafely, as Nynaeve is. Nynaeve plans to skip the lessons, but Verin deftly manipulates her into agreeing to stay. Egwene feels the flow of the power through her and is able to channel some slight weaves of air, but Nynaeve accidentally lights a stack of blankets on fire in her anger. Verin remains calm throughout and then leaves them with a casual warning about not, dying or burning themselves out. Other nights, they are taught by Alviarin, who is cool and critical, and Alana, who laughs and shows too much interest in Rand, Mat, and Perrin, and Liandrin, who barely teaches at all. Egwene starts having strange dreams and seeks out Moiraine to tell her about them, but she learns from Anaya that Moiraine left 2 days before with Lan, followed by Liandrin, and then Verin, who left her warder behind. None of them warned Swan, who is furious. Egwene decides not to tell Anaya the details of her dream about a man with fire for eyes and an evil woman watching over Rand and a trap slowly being shut. She only tells Anaya that she had a dream, and because of it, she knows that Rand is in danger. Anaya tells her that she could be a dreamer, but for now, it is time to get aboard a riverboat and get to Tar Valon. Chapter 13, From Stone to Stone. When Rand wakes up, almost everything has changed. The world has a pallid, subdued look, and aside from Loyal and Huron and their horses, everyone else is gone. They are now in the middle of the hollow, and the stone cylinder in the center is now tall and covered with markings. The bottom of the hollow is paved with smooth white stone and surrounded by steps in 7 different colors, the same as the colors of the Ajas. He wakes up Huron and Loyal, who are disoriented, but Loyal quickly figures out what must have happened. He realizes that the stone must be what is called a portal stone, which is from the Age of Legends, and at the time some Aes Sedai used them to travel to worlds that might be. He doesn't have a detailed explanation for exactly what that is, because he only ever read a fragment about them. But Rand at least is able to figure out that he must have somehow channeled, and that is what activated the stone and brought them there. Huron is calm and surprisingly confident that Rand will be able to get them back somehow. Rand wishes to deny this, but he only says he will try his best and gives his oath on it. He touches the stone and attempts to embrace the source. Fear holds him back. He feels the oily, sickening slickness of the taint on Saidin, and the void shatters painfully. Rand feels sick and says he will try again in a moment. But Huron suggests that maybe they could make the Dark Friends tell them how to get back. He can still smell their trail here, though faintly, so they guess that somehow the Dark Friends have gotten there too. Rand decides they will continue to follow the Dark Friends' trail, and Huron seems more confident than ever, though Loyal seems doubtful. He asks Rand how he thinks to use a stone, and Rand tries to deflect him away from the idea of using the power. As they ride, they notice that the land seems to twist the eye. Out of the corner of the eye, things appear distant, but when they turn to look at it, things seem to jump closer. It makes them sick as they continue to ride south. Chapter 14, Wolf Brother. Perrin listens to Ingtar and Uno as Uno attempts to explain that Rand, Huron, and Loyal and their horses have all vanished without the slightest hint of a trail. Matt says maybe they ran away, and Perrin wants to hit him to shut him up, but Matt stops. Ingtar doesn't believe it anyway, but he is beside himself because he cannot track the Dark Friends without Huron. Perrin realizes there might be something he could do to help. Reluctantly, he reaches out with his mind to make contact with wolves, and he finds some. They think he is Elias, and so he sends them an image of himself. They've heard of him, and they have their own image of him, which they send back, along with the name, Young Bull. Perrin sends them the scents of Rand, Loyal, and Huron, and they send back that they have not smelled them since they approached the hollow the night before. So this time Perrin tries the absolutely foul scents of Fane and the Trollocs, and he can hear the wolves howl and sense their rage and hatred, and they are able to show him where the Dark Friends are. Matt notices that Perrin feels sick, but Perrin says he's fine and leaves him to go tell Ingtar that he knows where the Dark Friends are. He explains to him that he can communicate with wolves, and Ingtar has heard of this, as well as Elias. Ingtar is happy to use the wolves to track, but decides that they should tell the soldiers that Perrin is instead a sniffer like Huron. The Shinarans mostly accept this, but Matt is scornful. From the wolves, Perrin is able to see ahead the disgusting pile of dead villagers, and he warns the group that something bad is ahead. At the same time, they realize that someone is following them, and Verin appears, galloping on a horse to reach them. Verin says, "Moiraine sent me, Lord Ingtar. She thought you might need me." She is surprised not to see Rand. And when Ingtar explains what happens, she surprises him with her knowledge of Huron's ability. Ingtar explains that Perrin is a sniffer as well, and they will continue the hunt. She decides to ride on with them. Perrin and Matt realize that it is Rand she is after, not the horn. The remainder of this video contains spoilers for the entire Wheel of Time series. If you do not want to be massively spoiled, stop here or proceed at your own risk. Verin explains about wilders and the blocks they usually have. And I think this is the first time we really understand that Nynaeve will have to work to deal with the walls she has built up around her ability and that prevent her from having conscious control. Nynaeve's block won't be fully dealt with until Book 7, but Robert Jordan was setting that up here. With Verin, I always enjoy the little hints that she is not at all as vague or distracted as she lets people think she is. Egwene catches a glimpse of that here when Verin is talking with her and Nynaeve about their abilities, and she suddenly has a gaze as sharp as Swan's had been. Egwene even wonders if Verin might know about Rand, but she dismisses it. The first of Egwene's dreamer dreams, she gets a glimpse of Ishamael, who actually sees her because he is in the world of dreams as she is. Then she sees the woman standing over Rand sleeping in the hollow, and that is Lanfear, of course. And this could be a good indicator that it's actually Lanfear who activates the portal to bring Rand to the mirror world. I think that's more likely than Rand accidentally doing it himself. The trap that Egwene senses could refer to many things because Shamael and Lanfear and Padanfain are all plotting things that are potentially dangerous to Rand. And now, one of the most speculated about lines from Verin. Moiraine sent me, Lord Ingtar. She thought you might need me. On first read, we don't yet know that Moiraine specifically denies this, but once she does, this twigged a lot of readers onto the question, is Verin lying? We know that Aes Sedai can twist the truth, so we can certainly come up with justifications that Verin might have been able to use to say this while still following the oath. At the same time, since suspicion at this point is still being cast on Moiraine, you could also initially question, is Moiraine the one lying? At some point, we accept that Moiraine at least is following the oaths and is not Black Aja, so the suspicion remained only on Verin. This alone was never enough to convince all the fans, but it was still a major piece of speculation about Verin. Eventually we learn, of course, that she can lie, so it's tempting to say she was just lying here. I still would say she's probably just twisting the truth, leaving herself an out in case her words got back to Moiraine, which they did. Verin is nothing if not careful, and she would want to avoid being caught in a lie. But this is wonderful foreshadowing for the eventual reveal about Verin, which is accomplished in dramatic fashion through a straightforward lie. That dress you are wearing is green. Verin shows how well she has judged Nynaeve's character already by how smoothly she convinces Nynaeve to participate in the lessons by dangling the carrot of being raised accepted and having more freedom to question and less time spent on chores. When Nynaeve struggles to surrender and says she feels like a blackthorn bush, Verin reminds her that blackthorn bushes can have beautiful white blossoms among the thorns. I also love how calm and cheerful Verin stays with Nynaeve's temper, how unruffled she is by Nynaeve setting the blankets on fire. And then she also, in a similar way, seems to really grasp Egwene's character. She realizes how Egwene just dives into learning without any real regard for the danger. She likens her to Moiraine in that way, which is an interesting contrast to the Moiraine that we know so far. But Verin, of course, knew Moiraine as a young novice and accepted. This quote of Verin's is perfectly illustrative of her character as well as Moiraine's. Well, Moiraine has never believed in telling anyone anything they did not need to know. Knowing serves no real purpose, but then neither does not knowing. Myself, I always prefer knowing to not. She sure does. This is another perfect quote that comes near the end of these chapters when Verin says, I do not like odd things until I can understand them. Again, emphasizing her unquenchable thirst for knowledge and understanding that drives her. Rand here begins his journey of accepting leadership. He quickly recognizes that he has some responsibility to Hurin and Loial, and that the only thing giving Hurin confidence is his belief in Rand's promise as a lord. So Rand stops saying he is not one, though he still tells Hurin not to bow to him. He does let his fear of channeling guide him in his decision to follow the Dark Friends in the Mirror World, but he still acts decisively and no longer questions that he is the one in charge. And he makes promises that he will get them back, even though he himself has nothing but doubts. In a similar way, Perrin has to quickly get over his desire to avoid talking with the wolves because of the need to get the horn and dagger back. This will not be a one-time decision for him, and he will keep coming back to this struggle. This is somewhat understandable, given that the image the wolves have of him has a lot to do with him killing White Cloaks, which he currently feels guilty for. He knows that the White Cloaks would have killed him and Egwene, but he still doesn't let that go. And I think the way he lost control has a lot to do with it. I think it scares him that the wolves' visceral fury at Fain and the Trollocs infects him, makes him snarl and take a step forward to join them before he stops himself. There is another part of the wolves' image of him, and that is the careful young man who thinks and moves slowly. Striking that balance between the two is what is really key for Perrin's character and the journey that he's going to go on. So, of course, it's going to take him a long time to see all of that. I think a rather subtle and ongoing theme that I haven't talked about enough is the loss of old abilities and knowledge and their returning. So for Egwene, we have the dreaming ability, which is all but lost among the Aes Sedai. Just to clarify, in case anyone needs a refresher, dreaming is the ability to have dreams that can foretell possible futures. There are some similarities to straight foretelling and even Min's visions in that all of these different types of visions, which are distinct, require some interpretation. Dreaming can show possible futures, which is a little bit different from Min's visions, which show certainties. And dreaming is also separate from the one power, as we will see that Perrin develops this ability as well. Then we have Huron's ability as a sniffer and Perrin's ability as a wolf brother. Both of these are very little known and even less well understood, and they're both at least suggested to be old abilities that have perhaps started to return. Here, we are also introduced to portal stones and mirror worlds, though we really haven't learned anything about them yet, just that the mirror worlds represent possible worlds. Every different choice leads to different variations and then infinite possibilities. So this is like the Watt version of the multiverse. But knowledge of these worlds and the portal stones that ancient Aes Sedai used to access them are all but lost. Loyal is one of vanishingly few individuals who would have any knowledge of them at all. Maybe a few brown Aja would also know as much as there is left to know about them. This loss and regain seems to be attributed to two things. First, the breaking, which led to the destruction of much of the knowledge that was gained during the Age of Legends. And number two, the pattern itself, based on need, it seems, spins out abilities as it needs them or not as it doesn't. And with Tarmon Gai'dan approaching, there's now a need for these abilities that can be a counter to the Dark One. The humor in these chapters is pretty much all Nynaeve, with a little Verin at Nynaeve's expense. I love Nynaeve saying she feels like a blackthorn bush, and then setting the blankets on fire in her frustration at being told what to do. Nynaeve's nature just rebels at having to surrender to gain control. So when Nynaeve goes to leave, Verin responds with, "As you wish. Did I mention that novices do chores, wash dishes, scrub floors, do laundry, serve at table, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you're staying? Good." She has Nynaeve's number. Leave me a comment and let me know who was your favorite character in these chapters and why was it Verin? But seriously, I definitely want to hear what your first impressions of Verin were when you first read these chapters. I am planning to cover chapters 15 through 17 next, but there's a slight chance that could change if I get this Twitter reread going. I will keep you posted on all the details, but make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss the next segment.